welcome back to Be More, where we inspire you to be a little bit more of every role in the Salesforce ecosystem. Today's session, we are encouraging you to be more UX designer. And I am joined today by Pallavi, and we are going to be talking about what this role is and what it entails. So Pallavi, maybe you can start by introducing yourself for our audience.
Hey everybody, I'm Pallavi Agarwal, Candor Consult CEO. I've been in consulting, quite a while now, 18 years, and really focused always on custom implementation. Started with ERPs, doing custom installs for the government in the US, and eventually getting into the commercial side and working with global companies. Always focused on making companies better by the technology and helping them through the adoption of it as well.
Awesome. It feels like you may have been asked that question before.
Just a few times.
Yeah, it's like you always knew what to say, That's awesome. So you kind of gave away your role a little bit in that, which is great. But maybe if you could introduce your role for us as a designer.
Yeah. So, as a CEO, I actually wear multiple roles. One is just running the company with the CEO's
Yeah.
title, but really my heart and my passion is around design. So, I actually in our company play the design architect role as well. So, that's where the UX piece really comes in of making sure that as we're helping our customers go on this digital transformation journey, we're really understanding their business needs, who's really trying to use the systems to help alleviate the pain points in their business, how to elevate their business, and how to keep it competitive. And that really is, as you keep hearing me say the word business, it really is about the business. And that's why I keep saying business.
Yeah, awesome. And maybe for our audience that they might be thinking what UX is, are you able to define that for us a little bit?
Well, yeah, I'm glad someone asked that because I didn't even know what UX was till like a few years ago. And then I'm like, wait, I've
Yeah.
been doing this forever. So that's me. I started my career as a tester and a BA,
Mhm.
and that was really about gathering requirements, understanding what the business side needed, and really helping them process, map, build flows, and figure out like what was their current state, where were the pain points, and what was the ideal state they were trying to go to.
Yeah.
And that experience, right, getting them to that ideal state is what we call user experience. A lot of times we say UI, UX, but it gets very convoluted because I think a lot of times we end up thinking about, oh, how does it look and feel? Where's the layout? The clicks. That's all more the UI. There is UX that plays in it because the actions of it is the UX part, right? But the look
Yeah.
and feel of it is the UI part. So we're really focused on, yes, we want the look and feel to be there because we want to create that empathy of them wanting to be like, oh, this is great. We want to use this. But it's really about the experience, right? It could look pretty, it
Yeah.
could be everything with the branding right on, but then the experience could be very complex and convoluted in the sense like, why do I have to do these many clicks or switch so many screens to do that one thing? Couldn't I have done it in a better way? So that's what we're talking about when I say UX, is that experience of walking through that journey in that technology.
That's a great explanation there. I wish I could just bottle it up and sell it because I think that's it to a T, really. So could you also summarize it by, I guess, the user's emotions as they're using the
Mhm.
system? That best good way to put it, do you think?
It is. It really is because, why are we doing digital transformations? We're trying to make things better. That's the nutshell of it all, right? People are investing all this money in Salesforce for their licenses, for the consulting, to make their business better by automating things, by alleviating pain points, by bringing data together. It's all to get more visibility and be better and be faster, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really about that experience. So if I'm going to invest all this time and money to do something, I'm expecting great results. I'm not expecting to be frustrated in that process of once I get the system where it needs to be. Well, now this is taking way longer than what I was doing in my old system or my old ways. Then why did I invest this time here? Right.
Yeah.
Or this is too complex. My brain, like I'm used to doing it this way. And now you're telling me to do it this way, and I'm not understanding it because it's not aligned to how I normally work, or it's not flexible enough for me, right?
Yeah.
It's really about that emotion. So think of the analogy that gets used a lot is like, if you build a mansion and no one wants to live in it, what's the point, right? So
Yeah.
our goal in that user experience is to really build these mansions, these dream homes for them actually want to live in, that they've been wanting for a long time. So then when they walk in, they're like, oh, this is the home I wanted. So that's the kind of feeling we're trying to give them with the systems we're building is like, yes, the money I just spent, the time I just invested, it was so worth it because look at the results. I can do these things faster. They got me. I have ways, flexible ways to do this, and just gives that positive emotion.
Yeah, and addresses their functional needs, but also their emotional needs as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. And that's UX in a nutshell.
yeah, exactly. Awesome. So, in your role as a designer, how do you interact with other people? Do you usually kind of play the designer role like full time? Is it as a consultant? You're also a little bit designer as well. How does that work in your experience?
I think I'm just a designer, like, by heart, because I
Yeah,
even in my daily life, I'll go somewhere and I'll get frustrated with something. I'm like, "Who built this? Who designed this?"
yeah,
So, I don't think I turn that designer brain off, but when we interact with our customers, I actually have multiple roles I play, right? I am the CEO of our consulting firm, so I'm playing that role. I am the account executive at times or customer success, but then I'm also the designer. So it's just a matter of where and how we play those roles and when is needed. But for me, it kind of comes through along the way, even sitting in executive role, like where I'm just checking in with the customers. I'm always asking them, like, how are things going? Are there other things that you need? What are some of your pain points? Is the system helping? Is there more? I always ask them about their utopic state. Is there more on their wish list that they didn't get yet? Right. That's the designer in me constantly asking, do you have
yeah.
anything else? Right. Have you been satisfied to the extreme, or you're okay and you're still dealing with some pain points? So there's that piece. And then there's times where I actually come into a delivery project as the architect, where I'm helping run design architect sessions that we have and leading those sessions with my team, where I'm really facilitating as a consultant in that room to get the right designs put together so then the team can go do what they do best is designing, really solutioning it out and building it.
Hmm. Yeah, awesome. And I guess is that across the whole suite of different Salesforce products?
Yeah, because I think the design role is very technology agnostic, right? If
Yeah,
you do it right, it should be technology agnostic because the design role is really where you're asking and focused on the business and the business needs. But to make sure we are building the right technology and the right solutions, that's where the designer and the architect need to be collaborative.
yeah,
And we always have our architects sit in those design sessions so that way they can really focus on listening to what's being said in the room and start thinking about what that solution may look like from a technology perspective. But
hmm,
we're still focused as a designer to ask all the business questions. So we actually are not allowed to solution in those calls. We're not
yeah.
allowed to talk technology terms. We focus solely on the business.
Yeah, and that's very hard for somebody like me to do as a solution architect. Like it's got solution
Right.
in the name. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's difficult, and you kind of have to capture the requirements in a
And
technology agnostic way as well, right?
I'm not a solution architect, and sometimes I get caught solutioning
Yeah.
in those calls, and either I call myself out or someone on my team calls me out, which I love because, we're really supposed to be technology agnostic in those sessions, and we really try. Sometimes our clients start talking about pick lists and
Mm,
checkboxes and how many fields, and I'm like, "Stop. We don't
yeah.
care what a pick list or a field. Just tell me what is the business need."
Yeah.
And
What's the problem?
from there, we'll figure out what it needs to be from a solution perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I I get that all the time from kind of my own customers as well. They come to me and they say, "Oh, I need a flow that does this," and I'm like, "But why?" Like just that powerful question of why. Like, can
Yeah,
you agree?
Yeah, and it's really, as a designer, I think a lot of it we did a design session yesterday with some of our customers, and they called it a therapy session because they couldn't answer the why except this is what we've been doing.
Mm,
And
okay.
at the end, they were like, "Wait, are you giving me permission to not do this anymore?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yes, I'm giving you permission. If it's not needed, we don't need to do it." And they're like, "Oh my god, that's such a relief. This feels like therapy." So, you know, so I think it's also to be a great designer is also understanding what you're hearing from your clients.
Hmm.
Your clients cannot you don't have to be in consulting to have clients, right? I want to clarify
Yeah.
that too, because everybody that is in Salesforce is a consultant.
Yeah.
Even when you work in-house, your other departments or your team, someone's giving you requirements. That the person who has the need is who I'm referring to as a client,
Yeah.
right? So, you just want sometimes you have to hear them and know when they're not giving you enough to ask.
Yeah.
And that is the difference between a great consultant for design, like getting the right design, versus, yes, we do this, this is important. Because yesterday they went through it and they're like, this is important, this is important, this is important. I could have left it at that, right? But I was
Hmm.
like, actually, let's talk about why these are important. And then we got to like, well, once in a blue moon, somebody asks us about this.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but what are they using it for? Well, we don't really know. Then should it be
Yeah.
a required field right now and in the inputs and create this much
Mm,
data debt and also data inaccuracies because the pick list that they had there was very subjective.
yeah. Okay.
And so, and especially like we're moving to AI in the future, I'm also working with our client to make sure they have clean data and the
Yeah.
right type of data so that way, a couple months down the road when they want to start implementing the AI features, we can start doing that. But it all starts with the fundamentals.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of lay those firm foundations down
Yeah,
and then build on top of it, right?
exactly.
Maybe if
Exactly.
we go back to the mansion, you build in an extension to the mansion, a conservatory or something. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
That would be
awesome.
good. Yeah.
So kind of pivoting a little bit here, but if you were talking to somebody who was looking to start out in this role,
Mhm.
what tip advice would you give them to kind of get started?
I'm a bit contradictory because even though I said that your design sessions should remain technology agnostic,
Hmm.
it is still very important to have the foundation of the technology in your mind, right?
Yeah,
I am not a solution architect by any means, nor a technical architect, right? But I know the basic foundation at minimum, if not more, of how Salesforce works across
yeah.
those clouds. And because I know how Salesforce works across multiple clouds, that's also what's helpful in my design sessions. Because as I'm hearing things, I also know what questions my technical team might have,
Hmm.
also getting those answered by the business to get to the right set of requirements, right? So, one is just having a foundational knowledge of the technology, but then two, from a designer perspective, understanding the fundamentals of design, right? It really is about the UI and the UX. And the UX, which is what we're more focused on, is not just asking questions in the room and getting the requirements. It's also then taking that and then doing industry research and understanding what are the best practices. Like when we're designing mobile side of the things versus
Yeah,
desktop, what is that experience going to look like? You have multiple mobile options these days, with all the different models of phones that are out there, different browsers that are out there.
yeah.
So you really have to do some research to think through like, how does this look and how's the functionality going to work and what is the user experience going to be in these various options. So you have
Hmm.
to do history research. You have to look at all of that. So UX is very complicated in that aspect. So really understanding the fundamentals, knowing where to go for some of those resources, right? Understanding some of the basics of tools that are used in design today. So Figma is one of them. You don't have to use it. You never do. I hate using Figma because it's very complicated.
That
But
is.
those who do
Yeah.
use Figma I have so much respect for them because it is a skill. It's like Adobe learning all of that. It's a
Mm,
skill. But knowing the fundamentals of it, right? So when you're working with your UI designers or working with your tech arcs, you know how to like think through wireframing and things like that. So that's what I would say is do some research. There's some great resources out there, even from Salesforce as a whole design community.
yeah,
They publish amazing resources to help you elevate your career and start your career in design. I would look at that. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention that like today AI is also around,
yeah.
right? But you have to know the foundation. And once you have the foundation, you can use some of the AI tools at a prelim stage to help elevate some of your design gaps.
Yeah, 100%. I think people perhaps sometimes rely on AI to kind of fix their data problems or fix their
Yeah,
systems
yeah,
problems. Not going
exactly.
to do that, you know?
You're right.
We touched on it a little bit, but I want to kind of dive in a little bit deeper on a particular area. Accessibility.
Oh gosh, yes.
I mean, I could just leave it there and just hand it over to
Oh yeah,
you.
that's that's a touchy topic for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't always incorporate it, right? Like
Mm,
that is very much afterthought unless certain companies have compliance rules for accessibility. Not everyone
yeah.
thinks about it, right? The classic example of accessibility is color blindness, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are colorblind, which some of the best artists out there are colorblind, believe it or not, where they can't see certain colors.
Yeah.
So for accessibility and the user design and UI piece, like there are certain colors that are more acceptable and certain colors that are not as acceptable to help with color blindness. Then there's products out there that actually read the screen for you
Yeah.
for people who are fully blind, right? Or the layouts and things like that. So that's just one tiny aspect of
I know.
accessibility.
Yeah.
But that tiny aspect is so important that we don't always even pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So I think accessibility is a big thing. I think it's becoming more and more prevalent. Like more and more of our customers are starting to talk about accessibility and
Mhm.
want to make sure that everything we're building is compliant in that regard.
Yeah.
So that is another thing that we don't always talk through. Another option for accessibility is right, like mobile versus desktop, like how accessible versus tablets. Are we building the tools in a way that it can be streamlined across, or is it more that certain functionalities are only available via desktop versus mobile versus tablet? So thinking through some of those and trying to make it as standard across,
Yeah.
making it as friendly across the different disabilities that people have, making it as 508 compliant, right? Where the software can read the screens and help people walk through modules that you're building. There's
Yeah.
a lot around accessibility, and I am no expert in accessibility, but this is definitely a topic that is very important. And as designers, we need to keep that on the top of our minds and continue to like become more and more educated and make sure we're involving our team and educating our technical teams to help build around it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's important to, as you
Yeah,
say, it needs to be at the forefront of your mind and you
yeah.
shouldn't forget about it. You should always consider it. And I think going
Right.
back to what you said earlier about like solution agnostic, my brain just kind of connected the things and it was like, so the experience should be device agnostic, right? But at the same
Yes,
time, work across any form factor, whether it's mobile, tablet, desktop, the experience should be
exactly.
the same. Yeah.
As much as we can, because that also helps with user adoption, right? Why do
Yeah.
we focus on all of this experience, user experience? Because we want the people to use it, which is what user adoption or human-centered design is all about, right? So
Uh-huh.
today, instead of having user adoption in one place and having user design in one place, it's really one. And that's what we're calling human-centered design. How do we design things that are human-centered in a way that they'll want to use it?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really nice summary of that there. So kind of hopping on to the next question. If you were to start out again in this role as a designer, what would you change or do differently? Or perhaps there's something that you would do earlier in your career. Like anything there?
I just want to know, have you secretly been listening in on my conversations?
Nope.
I I literally just had this conversation with a friend of mine, and I was like, I didn't know. I always live under a rock, and I'm always like a little late to the game. But when I was living in San Francisco about a decade ago, UI UX was like a very big role, and it was so like brand new. Everyone was like, we need UI UX for this and that, and like it was just every company was using that word.
Yeah.
I thought it meant you had to know Adobe, you had to know all these tools and
Yeah.
build wireframes. Because to me, I always thought of it that way, right? I thought of it more from the UI perspective. Had
Mhm.
I known what I knew today about it, I would have embraced that even more and probably like gone more in depth and become more of an expert there and really turn that into a vertical for myself because I am so passionate about it and really helped other companies see the need for it because in that time people knew it was needed and
Mhm.
the role was being talked about, but over time because it was hard to fill those roles or we got what we needed, it kind of got glossed over and the importance of it died a little bit. But I think,
Yeah.
for me, at minimum, whatever organization I would have been at, had I embraced that role, I would have beat drums to like make sure it stayed important and relevant because it is such a key to everything.
Yeah, pushing the agenda for great
Yeah,
design and yeah,
yeah, like I think Tom, you and I have joked about this design for humans by humans, right?
exactly 100%. Yeah.
And we don't always do that even now. So I think if I was to do that, I would have spent more time there and really elevated that role and helped the organizations I was with understand that importance because now fast forward a decade later they're starting to understand the importance and now everyone is standing up those design innovation centers and teams
Mhm.
and really getting focused on that.
So if you were kind of summarizing skills or attributes that it takes to be a designer, I mean, we've got some already, active listening being one, kind of
Mhm.
personifying your users or walking in their shoes to
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
firsthand, like what jobs are they trying to do? What other kind of phrases or keywords would you throw into the mix?
It's so much like one of
Yeah.
the other big ones I would say is critical thinking, right?
Mm.
Critical thinking is the key because you have to know when to ask more questions and connect the dots. And that's like taking big pictures, as I always say, 10,000-foot level, and
Yeah.
then knowing to come down to the 100-foot level and then come back to the 10,000-foot levels. Knowing, and that's a lot through critical thinking, knowing when to ask what questions, knowing how to connect the dots from a business perspective and knowing when to hone in on this one thing I just learned. That's really important. We don't want to miss that point. And then this point, even though we've spent 20 minutes talking about it, it's not that relevant. Let's move on.
If there's one thing you'd like to change about the role, or perhaps now the opportunity to debunk a myth about designers, any ideas or like any thoughts on that as an area?
Yeah, I think, this is a debate I have a lot. Do you need someone with the title designer on your team,
Hmm.
right? Because, and I can go either way. I think it's more of does anyone on your team have that skill set? Which is the design thinking skill set, right? So
Yeah.
you don't necessarily always need a designer on your team. You just need somebody minimum, at least one person on the team who has that design thinking skill set, which can be your solution architect, your BAs, you know, at the end of the day, what we're trying to change is it's not a specific person or a role. It is a mindset that everyone needs to adopt to have the fundamentals. Because even when you're solutioning it, you want to think through the back end and the front end and how who are all the different users that are going to be using it versus just solving for that one problem, right? That's the design thinking mindset that we're trying to have architects and BAs and developers, like everybody who's working on solutioning or building or in digital transformation should really have that design thinking mindset and keep that mantra of like, if I build it, will they live in it? Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And that's it. So I think it's everybody. And that's what we're trying to change versus it's a specific role.
Yeah. And I think kind of similar with you there, like on the fence about whether it's a role or not. I think it's just important that someone thinks about it and
Yeah.
acts on it. And personally, quite often, like in projects, that person is usually me as a solution architect. Like I do think about it because I'm like, what about if a partner sees this and they've got to do 12 things to do a very,
Right.
or,
But then there's times where you need a UX UI designer,
yep,
right? We've actually
definitely.
had customers who are very big. They have their own internal design teams and they're very big on wireframing and things like that. And that's when we do bring in the experts who know those tools to use Figma to just draw those wireframes, to really think through the UI piece, to then go do industry research of where the hamburger menu should go and what
Yeah.
what age group is using it, where do they normally click to do this, where should the sign up button be, and all that. So sometimes you need that expert. I think it's project by project, but at minimum you need to have design thinking on your team.
Yeah, and I know as much as we kind of said solution agnostic, there are going to be projects that perhaps need that more. For example, just making this up now, but like a customer community or customer portal that's going to have like a complete custom UI. Of course, you're going to need a design person there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we are kind of wrapping this session up into a close now. But before we do go, how can people connect with you and your content and kind of be inspired to be a little bit more UX designer?
They can follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter or just email me. Yeah, I'm fairly open to connecting with anybody. Happy to help anyone in our community or outside that's looking to get into Salesforce or design.
Yeah.
This passion of mine, so I will always help people on that.
And they can perhaps spot you around at Salesforce events in your golden hoodie as well.
Yes, I don't know if it'll always be on, but yes, they can spot
Yeah.
me at these events. I definitely love attending those, so it's a high chance of seeing me there.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining today. And hopefully together when this session goes out, we will inspire our audience to be a little bit more UX designer. So thanks again. Thanks for tuning in to Be More with Tom Bassett. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave any feedback in the comments.